Hello students, this is Professor R. M. Mahendrakar from JSS Arts, Science and Commerce College, Gokak. So today we'll be discussing about the structure of ecosystems. Here we'll be studying about what is the meaning of ecosystem, the functions of ecosystem, and we shall see how all the functions of the ecosystems are met, taking some examples. So first let us understand the concept of an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a system consisting of biotic and abiotic components that function together as a unit. The term ecosystem is derived from the Greek word oîkos, meaning house, and sústēma, meaning organized body. The term was coined in the early 1930s by the botanist Roy Clapham to denote the physical and biological component of an ecosystem. However, it was the British ecologist author Tansley who first introduced the concept of ecosystem in his paper entitled The Use and Abuse of Vegetational Concept. Natural sciences like ecology and geography define ecosystem as a geographic area where organisms, weather, and landscape work together to form a bubble of life. What does ecosystem consist of? An ecosystem consists of an assembly of mutually interacting organisms and their environment in which materials are interchanged in a largely cyclic manner. Remember, the environment in which a particular organism lives is called its habitat, and the role of an organism in a habitat is called its niche. Now, these are some key points which you should remember. An ecosystem consists of a community of organisms together with their physical environment. Ecosystem can be of different size and can be marine, aquatic, or terrestrial. Broad categories of terrestrial ecosystems are called biomes. In ecosystem, both matter and energy are conserved. Energy flows through the system, usually from light to heat, while matter is recycled. Now we shall see the structure of ecosystem. A ecosystem consists of two major components, biotic component and abiotic component. The abiotic components consist of sunlight, air, water, and soil. The biotic components are of three types: producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers are the one which convert the solar energy into biological energy, and consumers help in the transfer of this energy from one trophic level to another trophic level, and decomposers help in recycling the matter. The consumers are classified into three types: primary consumers, secondary consumers, and top consumers. With the help of the pond ecosystem, let us understand the basic concept involved in an ecosystem. Now, to understand the ethos of an aquatic ecosystem, we are taking an example of this small pond. Pond ecosystem refers to a freshwater ecosystem on which different organisms depend for their survival and to fulfill their nutritional needs. The ponds are the water bodies which are usually 12 to 15 feet deep, in which the sun rays reach, which results in growing of plants down there. The components of pond ecosystem include both biotic and abiotic components. Biotic components consist of producers, consumers, and decomposers, whereas the abiotic components include the organic and inorganic material, light, temperature, etc. It should be noted that biotic components follow a food chain in any ecosystem. A pond ecosystem can be divided into four zones: littoral zone, limnatic zone, profundal zone, and benthic zone. The littoral zone is the shore area of the lake or pond. The littoral zone consists of area from the dry land sloping into the open water and can be very narrow or very deep. Typically, oligotrophic or young ponds have narrow littoral zones due to their steep sides, while the eutrophic or old ponds have wide littoral zones due to their gently sloping shoreline and sides. The littoral zone is shallow and gets a lot of nutrients from runoff and non-point surface pollution. Therefore, it typically has an abundance of aquatic plants and algal growth. The second is limnatic zone. The limnatic zone is generally classified as the open water area of the pond or lake. Generally, limnatic zone is composed of much larger section of water in oligotrophic or younger ponds and lakes than the eutrophic or older bodies of water. Within the limnatic zone, there are two separate sections. The upper portion of the limnatic zone, where the sunlight reaches it and the water is warm, this zone is called euphotic zone or epilimnion. This is the portion of water that receives sunlight. The eutrophic zone is where algae and other aquatic plants thrive, along with the littoral zone. Also, this is the typical area of the dense fish population because oxygen levels are typically higher due to contact with the air. The third is profundal zone. It's also called as hypolimnion. It is a cold water region. The profundal zone is located below the thermocline where the sunlight does not penetrate. Again, the size of this zone depends upon the age and water clarity of the pond or lake. The profundal zone typically has the lower fish population because of lack of oxygen during many parts of the year. The fourth is the benthic zone. This is the bottom of the pond or lake and consists of organic sediments and soil. The benthic zone of the pond or lake is called the digestive system. It is where the bacteria decompose organic matter from the dead algae, aquatic plants, and fish and animal waste. The more organic matter in the pond, the more decomposition takes place. Based on the origin and composition, pond ecosystem is classified into 5 types. They are the salt ponds, garden ponds, freshwater ponds, vernal ponds, and underground ponds. Salt ponds are one which are near the seaside and consists of brackish water. Garden ponds are those which are artificial in nature. Freshwater ponds can be formed anywhere because of the rain and topographical features. Vernal ponds are those which are created because of depression in the ground and are seasonal. Lastly, underground ponds which are created near the rocks. In this presentation, we'll study the freshwater pond ecosystem. So let us study pond ecosystem. Pond and lake are freshwater ecosystems in which, like other ecosystems, they are two main components, the abiotic components and biotic components. The abiotic components are all the non-living components of the ecosystem. They include the water, dissolved minerals, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and solar radiation. Solar radiation is the main source of energy, and with this energy and the dissolved minerals and the gases, the plant can synthesize their own food and develop their body. The second is the biotic components. The biotic components includes all the living components of the ecosystem. These biotic components are further classified into three parts: producers, consumers, decomposers, and transformers. On the basis of the water depth and types of vegetation and animals, there are three zones in a lake or a pond. They are the littoral, limnatic, and profundal. Now, the structure about all this has been already explained in the earlier slide. Now here we shall just see what all the different animals and plants occur in these different zones of the lake. In the littoral zone, the shallow water region, which is usually occupied by the rooted plants. So here we can see the amphibious plants. In the limnatic zone ranges from the shallow to the depth of effective light penetration, and the associated organisms are small crustaceans, rotifers, insects and their larvae and algae, and all these different floating hydrophytes. The profundal zone is the deep water part where there is no effective light penetration. The associated organisms are snails, mussels, crabs, and worms. So first, let us study about the producers. The main producers in the pond or lake ecosystem are algae and other hydrophytes. The green plants, green algae, and some bacteria are photoautotrophic. They use a pigment such as chlorophyll to trap the energy present in solar radiation and convert it into biological energy through a process called photosynthesis. They then store that energy into a form of food that all life forms can use, and use it to create their required proteins, sugars, lipids, and more essential materials for life. Hence, these organisms are called producers. The main producers in the pond or the lake ecosystem are algae, and they are classified as follows: phytoplanktons, submerged plants, free floating plants, rooted and emergent plants. Now first let us see about the phytoplanktons. The phytoplanktons are the microscopic plants that live suspended in the water column. Phytoplanktons communities are usually quite diverse, with typically several dozens of species. Some examples of phytoplanktons are this Botryococcus browni, Legorrhea, Pedistratum, Colostrum microsporum, Tetradendron condatum, Tetrastertum, Eudorina elegans, Monactinus simplex, Echitodesmus, Actinosantrum, Villia, and Lagermania ciliata. The submerged plants include this microsode, Anarachus, Java fern, water sprite, Anubinus nana, Camboba, Ludwigi ovalis, Echinodorus parviflorus, Cryptocorny spiralis, Vallisneria spiralis, Hydrilla, Cara, etc. The free-floating plants include this Lemna valdiviana, Salviana minima, Pisthia stardiotis, Wolffia angusta, Ecornia crassipus, Azula pinnata, etc. Rooted and emergent plants include the violet blue Potendria, Nymphea lotus, Typha augustifolia, Persicaria amphibium, Lausiana iris, Polygonum capitatum, etc. Now these are some of the examples of these different types of algae and hydrophytes. Now the next group are the consumers. Consumers are also called heterotrophs. These are the organisms that eat other living organisms to obtain energy. Their name comes from the Greek word hetero for other and troph means food. Herbivores that eat plants, carnivores that eat animals, and omnivores who eat both plants and animals are all the heterotrophs and come under consumers. Consumers are classified into three parts or three groups: primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers or top consumer. The primary consumers are all herbivores. The primary consumers in the pond food web consists of tiny herbivorous animals that feed on algae and other aquatic plants to sustain themselves, such as nearly microscopic animals, and they are collectively called as zooplanktons. Some of the examples of zooplanktons are this planula larva, siphonophore, unshelled pteropod, shelled pteropod, atlantid heteropod, squid, krill, daphnia, etc. The other heterotrophic animals include insects, tadpoles, very small fishes and snails. Insects like this Timima christia, then Neoclarus babinae, fish larva, pond snail. All these are some of the examples of this primary consumers. Secondary consumers. The next strand in the aquatic food chain web is the secondary consumer. They eat the primary consumers. This second level of animal consumers include many species of these dragonfly larvae, boatmen, fishes, snakes, frog, crayfish, turtle, mosquito larvae, etc. Tertiary consumers or top consumers. The aquatic food web also includes the tertiary consumers, which eat the animals of primary and secondary level. This third level of animal consumers include fish and frog eating water birds, fish eating hawk, numerous small mammals and human beings. Sometimes human beings and predator birds are classified as top consumers. Examples of these top consumers are black crowned night heron, kingfisher, blacksmith lapwing, green shark, crane, etc. Now the third components of the biotic component are these decomposers and transformers. When aquatic plants and animals die, a large number of bacteria and fungi attack their dead bodies and convert the complex organic substance into simpler inorganic compounds and elements. These microorganisms are called decomposers. Chemical elements liberated by decomposition are again utilized by the green plants in their nutrition. Thus, pond ecosystem performs all the functions of an ecosystem and that of the biosphere as a whole. That is, conversion of inorganic into organic material with the help of radiant solar energy by autotrophs, that is productivity, consumption of autotrophs by heterotrophs, that is energy flow, decomposition and mineralization of the dead matter to release back the nutrients back to the autotroph, that is decomposition and nutrient cycle. These events are repeated over and over again. So with this, we conclude this topic on this pond ecosystem. Thank you. Please take care of your health and be safe.